Today, in Chapter 40 of Brihad Parashara Hora Shastra, we will discuss topics such as Shadgraha Yoga and Kemdruma, the mathematics of emptiness and liberation. Right out of the gate, you're going to notice that Chapter 40 is a massive paradigm shift in the text. We're literally leaving behind all those standard predictions of daily life, the rules for marriage, career, and basic wealth. Instead, we are entering a realm of extreme cosmic architecture. The sage Parashara is outlining the exact, rigorous calculations where standard human experience just fractures. We're strictly examining how planetary geometry maps directly to the breaking points of human consciousness. This isn't just some vague mysticism. This is about astronomical realities mathematically forcing a psychological reset. We're going to thoroughly investigate the original Sanskrit principles, the precise calculation methods, and the deep philosophical meanings that transform a mathematical void into ultimate spiritual freedom. So let's dive into the foundational parameters laid out in verse 9 of chapter 40, which defines Kemdruma Yoga. Historically, this is recognized as the profound loneliness of the moon. Now, the ancient text is relentlessly specific in its calculation here. It dictates that to actually verify this condition, you have to first isolate the moon's exact longitudinal position. From there, you analyze its immediate spatial environment. The mathematical condition is triggered if there is no planetary body sharing the moon's house, and absolutely no planet occupying the adjacent relational slots, specifically the second house ahead and the 12th house behind. On top of that, there must be no planets occupying the angular houses from the ascendant. But notice the critical exception encoded right in the rule, excluding the sun. The sun's presence doesn't break this condition. Only the other planetary bodies can provide the structural and energetic support the moon mathematically requires to maintain its worldly stability. Now, what's really interesting is when we place these literal Sanskrit terms side by side with their English translations, it reveals that we're dealing with a strict astronomical formula, not just simple poetry. Parsing the original Sanskrit text, Vina, translates to without or excluding, and Bhamnum represents the sun. Chandra is our focal point, the moon, which acts astrologically as the primary receptor for the mind and human consciousness. Dvitiya and Dwadasa refer exactly to the mathematical 2nd and 12th positions measured straight from the moon's exact longitude. The literal English translation of the resulting Kemdruma state paints a pretty stark, uncompromising picture. Someone reduced to penury, facing immense life perils, and utterly bereft of traditional learning and worldly fortunes. Through this precise parsing, we're literally translating a physical, spatial void in the heavens into a measurable psychological and material void here on Earth. To put that into perspective, the definition of Kemdruma signifies the absolute, ultimate state of the moon's loneliness. It mathematically strips away all surrounding planetary architecture. In practical terms, the moon just cannot function optimally in an energetic vacuum. It acts like a cognitive lens, reflecting and organizing the energies of the planets around it to form our worldly attachments. So when that lens is completely unsupported by planetary neighbors, the mind is left entirely to its own devices without any energetic buffer. To understand this in a modern context, imagine the psychological phenomenon of feeling profound, crushing solitude even while you're standing in a crowded room. The native's internal reality is completely disconnected from external material support. This is the simple English meaning of the condition manifested in human psychology: absolute, uncompromising isolation where the mind has absolutely nothing to anchor itself to in the material realm. When we read the direct astrological meaning provided by Sage Parashara in verses 11 through 13 on page 412 of the translated text, we see that the initial interpretation of this void is practical struggle, peril, and a massive lack of worldly fortunes. The text literally states that one born into this mathematical geometry will be very much reproached, be bereft of intelligence and learning, and reduced to penury. Now, on the surface, this reads like a dire curse against standard prosperity. But as researchers analyzing the deeper layers of this text, we have to recognize that penury and reproach are strictly worldly material measurements. The mathematical reality constructed here is deliberately pushing the native away from material reliance. Because there is absolutely no planetary architecture left in the immediate vicinity to support material attachment, the universe is effectively starving the ego of its external desires. Section 1. Kemdruma, the moon's loneliness. All right, to truly grasp the gravity of this condition, we can't just read the text. We have to rigorously apply its geometry to a natal chart. To construct the Kemdruma diagram, we follow a precise sequence of steps to prove the spatial mathematics of total isolation. First, calculate and locate the exact degree of the moon. This becomes your central anchor. Second, scan that specific house. It must be completely empty, save perhaps for the sun. If that's verified, proceed to step 3. Look exactly one house mathematically ahead, to the second second house. It must be an utter void. Step 4, look one house mathematically behind, to the 12th house. It too must be completely vacant. Finally, step 5 requires you to calculate the ascendant and verify its structural pillars, the 1st, 4th, 7th, and 10th angular houses. If these foundational angles are also empty, the condition is finalized. You have mathematically proven a void where the mind lacks all earthly support systems. Visualizing this astronomical reality on the zodiacal wheel, we see a vast stretch of degrees, a massive arc of the celestial sky, completely devoid of planetary bodies surrounding the moon. Astrologically speaking, the planets occupying the second house from the moon represent the natives' sustaining resources, wealth, and immediate familial support. The planets in the 12th house represent the natives' subconscious resting place, their release, and hidden strengths. When both of these vital spaces are mathematically zeroed out on this wheel, the native's mind is suspended in a void. There is nothing to feed it, and nowhere for it to comfortably rest. The resulting internal solitude is a profound, inescapable, astronomical reality, structurally engineered to sever the mind's normal operational reliance on the material structures of daily life. Section 2, Shadgraha Yoga, the six-planet alignment. Okay, if Kamadruma is the mathematics of absolute emptiness, Shadgraha takes the mathematics of planetary placement to the exact opposite extreme, absolute density. The original Sanskrit parsing of this condition gives us Shad, meaning the number 6, and Graha, meaning planets. When 6 planetary bodies calculate into a single house or a specific targeted alignment, they create an overwhelming gravitational and energetic black hole within the native's chart. The simple English translation is a 6-planet alignment, but its practical significance is a catastrophic overload of the worldly operating system. You see, the normal, healthy distribution of energy across the 12 houses of life, balancing career, wealth, and relationships, is completely shattered. All life force is violently pulled into one mathematical point. This localized extreme density overloads the psychological circuits, triggering what the ancient text calls Shadgraha Vairagya. This translates to a profound, spontaneous, and irreversible renunciation of the material world. To diagram Shadgraha Vairagya on a traditional Vedic diamond chart, the mathematical method requires calculating the exact longitudinal degrees of the visible planets and plotting their convergence. Instead of a balanced distribution, you would literally write 6 distinct planetary symbols into a single localized diamond segment or across a highly specific trinal axis. Visually, this creates a deeply heavy and crowded quadrant while leaving the other 11 houses almost entirely empty. The mathematical method here is a straightforward tallying of celestial bodies, but the result is a structural framework that is completely and permanently off balance. This extreme imbalance is the exact mechanism that breaks the native's attachment to standard worldly progression. The sheer, concentrated weight of that single house forces the consciousness to collapse under its own material obsession, leaving the native no choice but to look far beyond standard human pursuits to find relief. So what does this all mean? The ancient text isn't just calculating planetary degrees, it is calculating the exact breaking point of the worldly ego. We've now rigorously examined 2 distinct mathematical extremes, the moon surviving with absolute zero spatial support, and a single house being crushed under the immense weight of 6 planets. In both of these mathematical scenarios, the normal functioning of a worldly material life is effectively blocked by celestial geometry. You simply cannot operate a standard materially successful existence while enduring the profound psychological isolation of Kamadruma or the obsessive, blinding singularity of Shadgraha. However, this is precisely where the profound genius of Chapter 40 reveals itself to the researcher. The universe uses these extremes intentionally. This total breakdown of the material operating system is the exact, non-negotiable prerequisite for ultimate spiritual awakening. Look at this stark contrast explicitly built into these formulas. The exact same mathematical emptiness that causes immense worldly suffering is simultaneously the ancient blueprint for the highest spiritual liberation. Astrologically, this signals a devastating loss of wealth, public reproachment, and an undeniable lack of traditional learning. Honestly, if your life's goal is to be a comfortable, wealthy merchant, the conditions of Kamadruma and Shadagraha are your absolute worst enemies. Yet, considering the philosophical meaning, when the material world entirely rejects you, or when a singular, intense focus burns away all other earthly desires, you achieve vairagya, supreme detachment. You are forced into deep, unrelenting inner reflection simply because the outer world offers absolutely no support or distraction. The mathematics of these specific yogas systematically strip away the ego's external attachments. As we wrap up this explainer, we have to ask ourselves, is the mathematics of emptiness something to fear, or is it the only true path to liberation? Chapter 40 of the Brihadarashtra Shastra systematically dismantles the idea that the cosmos deals in simple human concepts of good or bad. Instead, it deals in absolute spatial realities that produce highly specific transformational outcomes. Whether you're analyzing the vast, isolated astronomical spaces of Chemadrama or calculating the overwhelming, concentrated density of Shadraha, you are looking directly at the mathematics of a human soul being systematically detached from the illusion of the material world. It permanently changes how one reads a chart, not merely as a map for worldly success, but as a rigorous mathematical equation for the soul's ultimate freedom. Thank you for joining me as we meticulously diagrammed and decoded these profound ancient formulas. Keep questioning, keep calculating, and I'll see you in our next deep dive.